The story opens with Maria, a woman who travels to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, aiming to stay close to her husband and support his career as an actor in a local TV drama. Soon after settling into the apartment, she begins exploring the place and enjoys a swim to refresh herself while waiting for her husband to return home.
Dona Maria, morador.
Not long after, a neighbor scolds her for playing loud music that disturbs them, and instead of apologizing, she simply turns off the music. Maria strolls along the poolside and eventually reunites with her husband, Pedro. Their private moment is suddenly cut short when a pot is thrown from the third floor by a neighbor trying to get them to leave. They begin spending their days like newlyweds, never seeming to tire of intimate moments together. At one point, Maria visits Pedro's filming location and observes him performing a scene with a female co-star. But she grows upset upon watching Pedro passionately kiss the woman. Even though it's part of the scene, she struggles to accept it. Back at the apartment, they encounter a reclusive neighbor named Horacio, who complains again about the constant noise disrupting his peace. Feeling trapped and uncomfortable, Maria decides to go out and walk around the shopping mall. There, she stumbles upon a magazine cover showing her husband alongside another woman labeled as his wife. This discovery enrages her, prompting her to confront Pedro, who brushes it off, saying it's part of his profession and nothing personal. That night, they argue fiercely. When Maria tries to leave the apartment, she finds the door locked, so she heads to the rooftop for fresh air, where she sees Horacio sitting quietly. She approaches Horacio and offers an apology for her earlier actions. Trying to bond, she casually asks for a puff of the cigarette he's smoking. Maria starts rambling, asking personal questions about Horacio's background, age, and family. He calmly responds that he lives alone and, in fact, owns the building. Maria is caught off guard by his surprising admission. After that, they return inside and continue their conversation. Horacio prepares a drink for Maria and becomes a patient listener, the kind of companion she feels she's been missing. Maria continues sharing how she and her husband ended up married and how his job forced him to leave, prompting her to move to this city to stay close by his side. But in return, all she felt was an emptiness that didn't go away. Following that night's encounter, her connection with Horacio gradually became warmer and started heading in a new direction. Still, she couldn't detach herself from her husband emotionally, choosing to forgive him despite the pain he'd caused. They continued sharing passionate moments in the pool, repeating the act several times. Yet when morning came, she found Pedro had already left for work, leaving her alone once more. Unable to cope with solitude, Maria began spending more time with Horacio. Horacio brought her to his room, where he revealed what he usually did to occupy himself when no one was around. Before she left, Maria thanked him sincerely for simply being there and listening. That evening, a lively gathering took place for the apartment residents, with everyone enjoying themselves, including Maria and Pedro.
Saudações rubro-negras para você. Para mim?
Noticing how close Maria had become with Horacio, Pedro grew suspicious and pulled him aside to question the nature of their bond. Horacio explained they were just a people who talked and listened, and warned Pedro not to leave Maria alone too often, as loneliness was getting to her. Soon after, a tipsy Maria entered the room and began making out with Pedro, engaging in intimate behavior in front of Horacio without hesitation. Feeling shocked and uncomfortable, Horacio walked away. He returned to his unit, turned up his music, and eventually drifted to sleep. Over the following days, Maria felt more and more distant from Pedro, who now seemed to spend most of his time away from home. One lonely evening, Maria recalled a traumatic moment from her past witnessing her father hanging himself. The memory haunted her, and she blamed Pedro for constantly being away, leaving her to deal with her sorrow alone. Maria climbed to the rooftop, consumed by her grief, until Horacio showed up to console her and help her regain her emotional balance. The next morning, Horacio played music that harmonized with Maria's feelings, giving her space to finally let out her thoughts. Maria confronts Pedro by the pool, leading to a heated argument that escalates until Pedro nearly tries to drown her. She quickly ran off, locking herself inside a room. Later that night, she showed up at Horacio's door, asking if she could spend the night there. Horacio agreed, and soon after, their interaction turned intense and physical. As the days passed, their bond grew stronger, while her relationship with Pedro seemed to deteriorate further. They began spending more time together, attending parties and enjoying peaceful nights as a pair.
Pedro, seu! Oi, amor. Maria.
Until eventually, Pedro discovered their affair and warned Horacio to stop seeing Maria, or he'd have to deal with the consequences.
Coração é tudo dela, meu cu.
Following this threat, Horacio decided to pull away from Maria, returning her to Pedro. Pedro expressed regret for how he had treated her before. Maria forgave him, but the love she once felt had clearly faded. Each morning, Maria would wake up alone again, as Pedro hadn't returned from work for several days. Taking advantage of the quiet, she joined other apartment residents at another lively gathering. There, she let loose with Horacio and a woman named Maka, engaging in an uninhibited threesome, experimenting with various positions. But suddenly, guilt struck Maria and she hurried away only to discover her husband had come home. Horacio, watching from afar, was filled with jealousy and anger. He started throwing liquor bottles in frustration, disrupting their moment. Days passed and things between Maria and Pedro began to heal, while she gradually distanced herself from Horacio. One night, she met Horacio to let him know she and Pedro planned to return to their hometown and start over. She thanked him sincerely for all the support he had offered her. After their farewell, Maria and Pedro headed straight to the airport, leaving Rio behind while Horacio could only weep over the loss of the woman he loved. Each of them tried to rebuild their lives, Maria rekindling her love for Pedro, and Pedro trying to repair what was broken. And with that, the story comes to a close.